The space around Kepler Station was quiet. Too quiet. Commander Jake Morrison felt something was wrong. He stood on the bridge of his ship, the Defender. It was an old military ship from the Valorian fleet. The Valorians were aliens who looked like tall humans with blue skin. They had been friends with Earth for 10 years now. Jake was leading 3 big cargo ships through space. His job was to protect them. The cargo ships carried food and supplies for the people living on Kepler Station. 2 military ships traveled with the cargo ships. Jake's ship was one of them. The other was called the Guardian. Lieutenant Amy Carter sat at her computer station. She was young but very good at her job. Her job was to watch the sensors. The sensors could see other ships far away in space. Amy had been working with Jake for 2 years. He trusted her completely. Amy suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Her fingers moved fast across her keyboard. Jake saw this and walked over to her. He knew that body language. Something bad was about to happen. 6 large ships appeared on the sensors. They came from behind the moon near Kepler Station. These were enemy ships. They belonged to the Krathians. The Krathians were an alien race that looked like giant insects. They had hard shells and many legs. They were not friendly. The Krathian ships were much bigger than Jake's ships. Each Krathian ship was 3 times heavier than the Defender. The Krathians had been attacking Valorian space for months. They wanted to take over more territory. They wanted more planets and more resources. Jake did not waste time. He started giving orders right away. The cargo ships tried to move away from the Krathians, but cargo ships are slow. They carry too much weight to move fast. The military ships moved between the cargo ships and the enemy. Jake hoped this would protect the cargo ships. The Krathian ships spread out in a circle. They surrounded the convoy. This was a classic attack pattern. Jake had studied it in military school. But knowing about it did not help much. His 2 small military ships could not fight 6 large Krathian cruisers. The Krathians opened fire. Green beams of energy shot through space. They were particle beams. These weapons were very powerful. The beams hit the last cargo ship in the convoy. The ship had energy shields to protect it, but the shields were not strong enough. The cargo ship's shields broke after only a few seconds. The green beams cut into the metal hull of the ship. Explosions started happening inside the ship. Fire and air began shooting out into space. The cargo ship was dying. Jake knew that everyone on that ship was probably dead. Amy sent out emergency calls. She used every radio frequency they had. She called for help from anyone who could hear them. The nearest Valorian military base was far away. It would take 4 hours for help to arrive. Jake's convoy did not have 4 hours. They probably had less than 10 minutes. Jake ordered both military ships to move in front of the cargo ships. He knew this would not save them, but it was all he could do. The Defender and the Guardian were much smaller than the Krathian ships. Their weapons were weaker, their shields were weaker, but they had to try. The Krathian commander seemed to enjoy this. The insect aliens did not rush. They took their time. They fired slowly and carefully. They were playing with their prey. This made Jake angry, but anger would not help. He needed to stay calm. He needed to think. The Krathian beams hit the Defender's shields. The shields glowed bright blue as they absorbed the energy, but they could not absorb forever. Jake watched the shield strength on his screen. The numbers went down fast. 70%, 60%, 50%. The crew on the bridge worked frantically. Everyone had a job to do. The weapons officer fired back at the Krathians, but their small guns did almost no damage to the enemy ships. The pilot tried to dodge the incoming fire, but there was too much of it. The navigator looked for an escape route, but the Krathians had blocked every direction. Jake felt sweat running down his back. This was bad. This was very bad. He had been in dangerous situations before, but never like this. He was going to die today. His crew was going to die. The people on the cargo ships were going to die, and there was nothing he could do about it. The shield strength dropped to 30%, then 20%. Jake gripped the arms of his command chair. He wanted to say something brave to his crew. He wanted to give them hope. But what could he say? They all knew they were about to die. Then something amazing happened. Amy's sensor screen lit up with a new contact. She stared at it for a second. Then she looked up at Jake. Her eyes were wide with surprise, maybe with hope. She spoke in a voice that shook with emotion. A human ship was entering the system. Not just any human ship. A warship. A military vessel from Earth's United Human Navy. The ship was coming out of faster-than-light travel right now. It would arrive in less than a minute. Jake had never seen a human warship in person. He had only heard stories. Humans were new to space travel. They had only met aliens 15 years ago, but their military was already famous across the galaxy. Or maybe infamous was a better word. Other races did not understand humans. Humans were strange. They had come from a world where different groups of humans fought each other for thousands of years. War was a normal part of human history. Most other alien races had stopped fighting before they went to space. Humans had not. This meant humans were very good at war, very good at building weapons, very good at military tactics and strategy. Some aliens were scared of humans. Some aliens did not trust them. But everyone respected their military power. The jump point in space began to glow. Jump points were places where ships came out of faster-than-light travel. The glow got brighter and brighter. Then the human warship appeared. It came through the jump point with perfect precision. The ship was exactly where it wanted to be. The ship's name appeared on Amy's screen. UHN's Relentless. It was a Titan-class heavy cruiser. One of the biggest and most powerful warships humanity had ever built. Jake felt hope rising in his chest. Maybe they would survive after all. The Relentless was beautiful. That was the first thing Jake thought when he saw it. The ship was painted black like the night. Lights ran along its hull in straight lines. It had many gun turrets and missile launchers. The ship looked dangerous. It looked like it was built for only one purpose: to fight and win. Valorian ships were smooth and curved. They looked peaceful and elegant. Krathian ships were rough and bumpy like insect shells. Human ships were different. They had sharp angles and flat surfaces. They looked like weapons that could fly through space. The Relentless moved through space with grace. It did not move like other big ships. Other big ships were slow and careful. The Relentless moved like a dancer. It was fast and smooth. The engines left trails of blue and white light behind it. On the bridge of the Relentless, Captain Laura Hayes sat in the command chair. She looked calm, but her eyes were sharp and focused. She was reading the tactical display in front of her. The display showed the Krathian ships. It showed the damaged convoy. It showed everything happening in the space around them. Next to her stood Commander Greg Palmer. He was the executive officer. That meant he was second in command. Greg was talking to the Combat Information Center. That was the room where weapons and sensors were controlled. He was getting ready for battle. The 6 Krathian ships saw the human warship arrive. They stopped attacking the convoy. They turned to face this new threat. The Krathians were not stupid. They knew human ships were dangerous. But they had 6 ships. The humans only had 1. The Krathians thought they could win. The Krathian ships began to charge their weapons. Energy readings spiked on the Relentless sensors. The insect aliens were getting ready to fire. They formed a battle line. This was standard Krathian military doctrine. They believed in using overwhelming firepower. Captain Hayes studied the enemy formation. She looked at it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she started giving orders. Her voice was calm and clear. She did not sound worried or scared. She sounded like someone who had done this many times before. The crew of the Relentless moved fast. Everyone knew their job perfectly. The weapon systems came online. The targeting computers locked onto the enemy ships. The engines powered up to full strength. The shields activated at maximum power. The whole ship became ready for combat in less than 10 seconds. Then the Relentless began to move. Not slowly like most big ships. It accelerated hard. The ship jumped forward like a sprinter at the start of a race. This was not normal for a ship this size. Capital ships were supposed to move carefully. The Relentless did not care about what was normal. The Krathian ships opened fire. Green particle beams shot through space. But the Relentless was not where they aimed. The human ship had already moved to a different position. The Krathian weapons hit empty space. On the Defender, Amy tried to track the battle on her sensors. But her computer could barely keep up. The Relentless was moving too fast. It was dodging and weaving through space. It was moving like a small fighter ship, not like a huge cruiser. This should not be possible. Jake leaned forward in his chair. He forgot about his own damaged ship. He forgot about the danger. He was watching something incredible. He was watching human military technology in action. Now he understood why everyone in the galaxy was talking about Earth's warships. The Relentless got closer to the Krathian ships. It was not trying to run away. It was attacking. This surprised the Krathians. Most races tried to keep distance in space combat. They fired from far away. Humans did things differently. Captain Hayes had her hands on the flight controls. She was flying the ship herself. Most capital ship captains did not do this. They let the pilot do it. But Laura Hayes had been a fighter pilot before she commanded big ships. She knew how to fly, and she was very good at it. The Relentless twisted and turned. It avoided most of the Krathian weapons fire. A few beams hit the shields. The shields flashed bright blue, but they held strong. Human shields were different from Valorian shields. They were designed to take more punishment. The Krathian ships kept firing. They filled space with green energy beams, but hitting the Relentless was like trying to hit a flying bird with a stone. The human ship was too fast. It moved too unpredictably. The Krathians were getting frustrated. The Krathian commander made a decision. He ordered all 6 ships to fire at once. They would create a wall of energy that the human ship could not dodge. This was a good strategy. Against most enemies it would work, but the Relentless did not try to dodge this time. Instead, it accelerated straight toward the Krathian line. This was crazy. This was suicide. The Krathians fired everything they had. Dozens of particle beams converged on the human ship. The beams hit the Relentless shields. The shields glowed so bright it hurt to look at them. Energy crackled across the surface of the shields. For a moment, it looked like the human ship would break apart, but the shields held. They did not break. Greg Palmer called out shield status. 60% and holding. The shields had absorbed an incredible amount of damage. More damage than any Valorian ship could take, and the Relentless was fine. It kept moving forward. Captain Hayes smiled. It was a small smile. A cold smile. Now it was the human ship's turn to fire. She gave one simple order. The weapons officer pressed the firing button, and the Relentless showed the galaxy what human weapons could do. The Krathians did not know it yet, but the battle was already over. They had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed human ships fought like everyone else's ships. They had assumed human weapons worked like everyone else's weapons. They were wrong. Jake watched his tactical display with wide eyes. He saw the Relentless weapons come online. He saw the targeting locks activate. And he knew he was about to see something that would change how he thought about space combat forever. The space around Kepler Station was about to become a demonstration of why humanity had earned its reputation. A demonstration of what happened when a species that had fought wars for thousands of years built starships. A demonstration that would be studied in military academies for decades to come. The Relentless fired its main guns. These were not energy weapons like the Krathians used. These were railguns. A railgun shoots a solid piece of metal at incredible speed. The metal moves so fast it becomes a devastating weapon. The railgun rounds traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. Each round carried as much energy as a small nuclear bomb. When they hit something, they did not just damage it. They destroyed it completely. The first Krathian ship took 3 hits. The rounds came so fast the Krathian crew did not even see them coming. One moment their ship was fine. The next moment it had 3 massive holes punched through it. The Krathian shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Particle beams, laser beams, plasma weapons. They were very good at stopping these weapons. But railgun rounds were different. They were solid metal moving at extreme speed. The shields could not stop them. The rounds went through the shields like they were not there. They punched through the hull armor. They went deep into the ship. Explosions started happening inside. Systems failed. Power went out. Air began rushing out into space. The damaged Krathian ship began to spin. It lost all control. It tumbled through space like a piece of garbage. Everyone on board was probably dead. The ship was finished, and this all happened in less than 5 seconds. The other 5 Krathian ships tried to react. They turned to focus their fire on the Relentless. But turning a big ship takes time, and the Relentless was not waiting for them to turn. The human warship fired missiles, not slow torpedoes that most races used. These missiles were fast. They accelerated constantly. They changed direction. They were smart weapons that could think for themselves. 25 missiles launched from the Relentless. They spread out in different directions. Then they curved back toward the Krathian ships. Columns of bright plasma pushed them faster and faster. The Krathian ships activated their point defense systems. These were small automatic guns that tried to shoot down incoming missiles. Green tracer fire filled the space between the ships. The defensive fire looked like rain made of light. 7 missiles exploded. The point defense got them. But 18 missiles survived. They dodged and weaved through the defensive fire. They were too fast, too smart, too hard to hit. The missiles hit 3 different Krathian ships. Multiple explosions bloomed across their hulls. Fire and debris shot out into space. The shields on these ships had already been weakened by the railgun fire. Now they collapsed completely. One Krathian ship simply exploded. A missile had hit near the reactor. The reactor was the power source for the ship. When it broke, all that energy had to go somewhere. The ship became a small sun for just a moment. Then there was only debris. Another Krathian ship went dark. All its lights went out. The engines stopped. The ship was dead in space. Either the crew was unconscious or dead. Either way, that ship was no longer a threat. The third ship that got hit was damaged but still working. It tried to turn away. The captain wanted to run, but the Relentless did not let it escape. More railgun rounds streaked across space. They hit the fleeing ship in the engines. The ship stopped moving. It was crippled. On the Defender's bridge, Jake stared at his screen. He could not believe what he was seeing. 3 Krathian ships destroyed. 1 more crippled. All in less than 30 seconds. The Relentless had barely been hit. Its shields were still at over 50%. Amy was crying. She did not try to hide it. Tears ran down her face as she watched the human ship fight. They had thought they were going to die. Now they were watching their enemies get destroyed. The relief was overwhelming. The 2 remaining Krathian ships made a decision. They tried to run. The commanders realized they could not win this fight. They turned away from the Relentless and tried to reach the jump point. If they could jump to faster than light speed, they might escape. But the Relentless was faster. It accelerated after them. The human ship cut through space like a knife. The distance between the ships closed rapidly. The Krathian vessels pushed their engines as hard as they could. It was not enough. Captain Hayes gave orders in her calm voice. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Ben Cooper, followed those orders perfectly. He had trained for this his whole career. Now he was putting that training to use. The Relentless fired again. Railgun rounds and missiles launched together. This was called a coordinated strike. The railguns would weaken the shields. Then the missiles would finish the job. Human military doctrine emphasized this kind of combined attack. The 2 fleeing Krathian ships died within seconds of each other. Railgun rounds tore through their engines. Missiles exploded against their hulls. Metal twisted and broke. Systems failed. The ships became dead hulks tumbling through the void. Suddenly, the space around Kepler Station was quiet again. But this was a different quiet than before. This was the quiet that comes after a storm. Debris floated everywhere. The remains of 6 Krathian cruisers drifted in expanding clouds. Jake looked at the timer on his screen. He had been tracking the battle from the moment the Relentless opened fire. The entire fight had lasted 47 seconds. Less than 1 minute. 6 enemy ships destroyed in 47 seconds. He sat back in his command chair. His hands were shaking. His whole body was shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off now. He had been so close to death. They all had been. And then the human ship arrived and saved them all. Amy sent a message to the Relentless. Her voice was thick with emotion. She thanked them. She thanked them over and over. The response came back quickly. Captain Hayes' voice was warm and kind. She said she was glad she could help. She said that was what allies do for each other. The Relentless came closer to the convoy. The human ship slowed down and took up a protective position. Captain Hayes told Jake that they would escort the convoy to Kepler Station. They would make sure no more Krathian ships showed up. The convoy reached Kepler Station safely. The 2 remaining cargo ships docked at the station. The supplies they carried would feed thousands of people. Lives were saved because of what happened today. Not just the lives on the convoy, but the lives of everyone on the station. Captain Hayes invited Jake and his senior officers to visit the Relentless. She wanted to meet them in person. Jake agreed immediately. He wanted to see the inside of a human warship. He wanted to meet the people who had saved his life. A small shuttle came from the Relentless to pick them up. The shuttle was sleek and fast. It had the same black paint as the warship. When Jake and Amy climbed aboard, they were greeted by a young human pilot. He smiled at them and welcomed them. The flight to the Relentless took only a few minutes. As they got closer, Jake could see the damage to the ship. There were scorch marks on the hull where Krathian beams had hit. But the damage was minor, mostly just burned paint. The ship itself was fine. The shuttle entered a landing bay inside the Relentless. The bay was huge. It could hold dozens of small ships. Jake saw fighters and more shuttles parked in neat rows. Everything was clean and organized. The humans ran a tight ship. They were met by Commander Greg Palmer. He was tall with short, dark hair. He shook hands with Jake and Amy. His grip was firm but friendly. He led them through the corridors of the ship toward the meeting room. Jake looked around as they walked. The corridors were wide and well lit. Human crew members passed them going about their duties. Everyone looked professional. Everyone looked confident. This was a crew that knew what they were doing. One thing Jake noticed was how young many of the crew were. On Valorian ships, most officers were older. They earned their positions through years of service. Here he saw lieutenants who looked like they were in their 20s. Humans promoted people based on ability, not age. They arrived at the wardroom. This was a meeting room where officers gathered. Captain Hayes was already there. She stood up when they entered. She was shorter than Jake expected. She had brown hair tied back in a neat style. Her eyes were intelligent and kind. Hayes shook hands with each of them. She invited them to sit at the long table. Other human officers were there too. The weapons officer, Lieutenant Ben Cooper. The chief engineer, Lieutenant Kate Murphy. The sensor officer, Ensign Peter Hill. They all looked young and capable. They talked for a while. Hayes asked about the convoy and the attack. Jake told her everything that had happened. He described how hopeless the situation had been. Hayes listened carefully. She seemed genuinely concerned about what they had been through. Then Amy asked the question that was on everyone's mind. She asked how humanity had developed such powerful ships in such a short time. Earth had only joined the galactic community 15 years ago. Before that, humans had never traveled faster than light. How could they build warships that could destroy Krathian cruisers so easily? Hayes and Palmer looked at each other. They seemed to be deciding how much to explain. Then Hayes smiled and began to answer. What she said made Jake understand humans in a whole new way. Hayes explained that humans had not developed this technology quickly. They had been developing it for hundreds of years. Long before they knew aliens existed, long before they could travel between stars. Earth had been a world at war with itself. Different groups of humans fought each other. Different nations competed for resources and power. Wars happened constantly. This was terrible in many ways. Many people died. Much was destroyed. But it also drove technological progress very fast. Every nation wanted better weapons than their enemies. They spent huge amounts of money on military research. They built faster planes, stronger tanks, more accurate missiles, better armor, more powerful bombs. The competition never stopped. When humans finally achieved peace on Earth, they kept all that military knowledge. They kept all those weapons designs. They kept all that experience with warfare. Then they went to space and met the galactic community. The Galactic Alliance was wonderful. So many different species living together in peace, trading with each other, helping each other. Humans were happy to join this community, but they also noticed something troubling. The Alliance had been at peace for a long time. So long that most species had forgotten how to fight wars. Their weapons were old designs. Their military training was basic. Their ships were not built for serious combat. They assumed peace would last forever. Then the Krathians started expanding aggressively. They attacked peaceful worlds. They took what they wanted. The Alliance tried to fight back. But their ships were no match for the Krathian military. Battle after battle was lost. Humans saw this happening. They saw their new friends being attacked. They saw peaceful species being conquered. They knew they had to help. So they built warships using all the military knowledge they had gained from centuries of human warfare. Palmer added something important. He said that human weapons were not designed to conquer anyone. They were designed to protect, to defend. Humans remembered what it was like to be threatened. They remembered what it was like to face a stronger enemy. They never wanted to be helpless again. Jake listened to all this and felt something click in his mind. He finally understood. Most races went to space after achieving peace. They brought peaceful attitudes with them. Humans went to space knowing that peace must be defended. They brought their military experience with them. Amy asked another question. She wanted to know if humans would help defend other Alliance worlds. Hayes smiled and said yes. That was exactly why they were here. The Relentless was on patrol, protecting Alliance space. There were other human warships doing the same thing in other sectors. Hayes explained that humans believed in a simple idea. If you want peace, you must be ready for war, not because you want to fight, but because being ready to fight often means you do not have to fight. Strong defenses prevent attacks. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When it ended, Jake felt like he had learned more about humans in those 2 hours than in the previous 10 years. He understood now why other species both respected and feared humanity. Humans were warriors who chose peace. That made them different from everyone else. News traveled fast across the galaxy. Within days, everyone knew about the battle at Kepler Station. 6 Krathian cruisers destroyed by 1 human warship in less than a minute. At first, many people did not believe it. They thought the reports were exaggerated. But then the sensor logs were released. Multiple ships had recorded the battle. The Defender had recordings. The Guardian had recordings. Even some of the cargo ships had basic sensors that captured the fight. All the recordings showed the same thing. The reports were true. The recordings spread across the galactic network. Everyone watched them. Military officers studied every second. Scientists analyzed the weapons. Politicians discussed what it meant. The battle became the most talked about event in recent galactic history. The Krathian hierarchy was shocked. Their military leaders held emergency meetings. They watched the battle recordings over and over. They tried to understand what had gone wrong. How had their ships been defeated so easily? The Krathian analysts wrote detailed reports. They explained that the human weapons were fundamentally different. Energy shields could not stop solid projectiles moving at near light speed. Krathian point defense systems were designed for slow torpedoes, not smart missiles that could think and dodge. But the weapons were not the only problem. Human ships were faster and more maneuverable than Krathian doctrine anticipated. Human targeting systems were more accurate. Human crews were better trained. Everything about human military technology was more advanced. The most disturbing part of the analysis was simple. Humans had not been lucky. They had not used some clever trick. They had simply been better. Better equipment, better tactics, better everything. And if 1 human ship could destroy 6 Krathian cruisers, what could 10 human ships do? What could 100 do? The Krathian leaders faced a difficult choice. They could continue their aggressive expansion and eventually face the full might of human military power, or they could step back and reconsider their strategy. The choice was not really a choice at all. Within 3 months, Krathian raids stopped completely. Their ships pulled back to their own territory. Their diplomats reached out to the Galactic Alliance. They proposed new border agreements. They offered trade deals. They suggested cultural exchange programs. The Krathians never officially admitted why they suddenly became peaceful. They never mentioned the battle at Kepler Station in their diplomatic communications. But everyone knew. Everyone understood. The galaxy had a new power. A power that could enforce peace through strength. The Valorian government was grateful. They had lost many ships and many lives to Krathian attacks over the years. Now those attacks had stopped. They knew they had humanity to thank. The bond between Earth and Valoria grew stronger. Jake Morrison returned to his duties on the Defender. He continued serving in the Valorian Defense Fleet, but everything felt different now. He felt safer. He felt like someone had his back. He kept a picture on his desk. It showed him standing with Captain Hayes and her crew on the Relentless. Amy Carter often caught him staring at that picture. She understood why. It reminded him that they were not alone. It reminded him that if they got in trouble again, help would come. Human help. Fast and overwhelming help. The Galactic Alliance changed its policies. They increased military spending for the first time in centuries. They asked human military advisors to help them redesign their ships and weapons. They wanted to learn from human experience. Humans were happy to help. They shared their knowledge freely. They did not try to keep their military technology secret. They wanted their allies to be strong. Strong allies meant a more peaceful galaxy. But humans also made something very clear. Their weapons were for defense, for protection, not for conquest. They would help defend any alliance member who was attacked, but they would not support aggressive wars. This was a line they would not cross. Some species were nervous about human military power. They worried that humans might become aggressive themselves. What if humans decided to take over? What if they became the next Krathians? But humans proved their intentions through their actions. When conflicts arose between alliance members, humans offered to mediate. They never took sides based on military advantage. They always tried to find peaceful solutions. They used their power to prevent wars, not start them. Captain Laura Hayes became famous. Her face was known across the galaxy. She gave interviews and speeches. She explained human military philosophy. She talked about the importance of being strong enough to deter aggression. Hayes said something in one speech that became famous. She said that humans did not seek war, but they would not run from it. They protected those who could not protect themselves. They stood ready so that others could rest easy. These words were translated into dozens of alien languages. The Relentless continued to patrol Alliance space for 30 years. It stopped several more attacks during that time, but most of the time, its mere presence was enough. Pirates and raiders saw a human warship on their sensors and decided to go elsewhere. When the Relentless was finally retired, it was sent to orbit Earth. It became a museum. Young officers from many different species came to tour the ship. They walked the same corridors Jake had walked. They stood on the same bridge where Hayes had commanded. The battle at Kepler Station was taught in every military academy in the Alliance. Students studied the tactics. They analyzed the weapons. They learned about the importance of training and preparation. The 47-second battle became a classic example of military excellence. Jake lived to see great changes in the galaxy. Valorian ships began using human-designed weapons. Joint patrols of Valorian and human ships became common. The two species became the closest of allies, brothers and sisters in arms. He also lived to see the Krathians change. The aggressive insect aliens became trading partners. Cultural exchanges began. Some Krathians even served on human ships as crew members. The former enemies learned to work together. Peace lasted for generations. Not because everyone suddenly became peaceful, but because everyone knew that aggression would be met with overwhelming force. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Strength and peace could exist together. The enemy had barely lasted a minute when the human warship entered the battlefield. But the peace that followed lasted far longer. And it lasted because humanity remembered something that others had forgotten, that those who want peace must be prepared to defend it. 20 years after the battle at Kepler Station, Jake Morrison retired from active service. He was older now. His hair had turned gray, but he still stood straight and proud. He had spent his entire adult life in the Valorian Defense Fleet. He had seen the galaxy change dramatically during that time. On his last day of service, a ceremony was held on Valoria's capital planet. Many people came to honor him. Amy Carter was there. She was a captain now, commanding her own ship. Other crew members from the Defender attended. Even some humans came. Among the humans was Captain Laura Hayes. She had retired from the Navy several years earlier. But she had made the journey to Valoria specifically for Jake's ceremony. When she walked up to him and shook his hand, Jake felt tears in his eyes. Hayes presented him with a gift. It was a piece of metal in a display case. The metal was scarred and burned. She explained that it was a piece of hull armor from the Relentless. It had been hit by Krathian weapons during the battle. She wanted Jake to have it as a reminder of that day. Jake accepted the gift with gratitude. He said that day had changed his life. It had changed how he saw the galaxy. It had taught him that even in the darkest moments, help could arrive. That allies meant something real. That friendship between species was not just words on a treaty. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Jake talked with many old friends. Everyone wanted to share memories. Everyone wanted to tell stories about their time in the service. These were the bonds that held the fleet together. The shared experiences. The mutual trust. Jake found himself talking with a young Krathian officer. This surprised him at first. Krathians in Valorian uniform were still uncommon. But they were no longer unthinkable. The young officer, whose name was Click Hisser in his own language, served on a joint patrol vessel. Click Hisser told Jake that he had studied the battle at Kepler Station in Military Academy. He said it was taught as an example of what not to do. Overconfidence, poor intelligence, weak tactics. The Krathian military had learned hard lessons from that defeat. But Click Hisser also said something else. He said the battle had taught the Krathians something important about themselves. They had believed they were the strongest military force in the galaxy. That belief had made them arrogant. The defeat had humbled them, and that humility had eventually led to peace. Jake listened to this young officer and realized something profound. The battle had not just saved his life that day. It had changed the course of galactic history. One ship, one captain, one crew. 47 seconds of combat, and everything was different afterward. Later that evening, Jake sat with Hayes in a quiet corner. They drank together and talked about old times. Hayes told him that the Relentless had been her favorite command. Nothing else had ever compared to those years of patrol duty. Jake asked her if she had ever regretted how the battle ended. 6 ships destroyed, thousands of Krathians dead. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she said she regretted that the battle had to happen at all. But once it started, she had done what was necessary to protect innocence. She explained that this was the burden of having military power. You could choose not to use it and watch others suffer. Or you could use it and carry the weight of those decisions forever. She had chosen to act. She would make the same choice again, Jake understood. He had made similar choices during his career. Every military officer did. The important thing was to remember that these choices mattered, that lives were precious. That force should only be used when absolutely necessary. The next day, Jake visited a memorial. It was built at Kepler Station. The memorial honored everyone who had died in Krathian attacks over the years, including the crew of the cargo ship that was destroyed before the Relentless arrived. The memorial was a simple structure made of stone and metal. Names were carved into its surface. Thousands of names. Valorians mostly, but also some humans and members of other species, all victims of the conflict that had finally ended. Jake stood there for a long time. He thought about all the people who had died. He thought about how close he had come to joining them. He thought about the randomness of survival. If the Relentless had been just a few minutes later, his name would be on this wall. But the memorial was not just about death. It was also about memory, about making sure these people were not forgotten, about learning from the past so that future generations could live in peace. Jake noticed something interesting. Near the memorial was a small museum. It displayed artifacts from the battle, pieces of destroyed ships, recordings of the fight, detailed explanations of what happened and why. But the museum also showed something else. It showed the peace that came after. Pictures of former enemies working together, stories of friendship across species lines, examples of cooperation and mutual understanding. This balance seemed important to Jake. Remember the war but celebrate the peace. Honor those who died but focus on building a better future. Learn from violence but choose cooperation. As Jake prepared to leave Kepler Station, he received a message. It was from Greg Palmer. He was now an admiral in the human fleet. Palmer invited Jake to visit Earth. He said there was something Jake needed to see. Jake accepted the invitation. A few weeks later, he traveled to Earth for the first time. The human homeworld was beautiful. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked peaceful from space. But Jake knew the history. This peaceful world had seen countless wars. Palmer took him to see the Relentless. The old warship was in museum orbit around Earth. Thousands of visitors came to tour it every day. Jake walked the corridors where he had walked 20 years ago. Everything looked the same, but also different. Frozen in time, they stood on the bridge. The same bridge where Hayes had commanded during the battle. Palmer pointed out where each officer had sat. He explained what each person had been doing during those crucial 47 seconds. Jake realized something as he stood there. This ship had become a symbol, not just of military power, but of what that power should be used for. Protection, defense, deterrence. The Relentless represented the idea that strength and morality could coexist. Palmer showed him one more thing. In a special room on the ship, there was a display about Kepler Station. It showed pictures of Jake and his crew. It told their story. It explained how close they had come to death and how the Relentless had saved them. Jake was honored to be remembered this way. But he also felt humble. He had just been doing his job. He had just been trying to survive. He was not a hero. The real heroes were the crew of the Relentless who had risked their lives to save people they had never met. As Jake prepared to return home, Palmer gave him something. It was a uniform patch from the Relentless. He said that Jake was part of the ship's history now, part of its legacy. He should be proud of that. Jake returned to Valoria. He lived quietly in retirement, but he never forgot that day at Kepler Station, the day when hope arrived at impossible speed, the day when human military might proved itself in defense of the innocent, the day that changed the galaxy forever.